Hey, MCE crew. Well, there's blood in the streets. The S&P 500 is down over 16% for the year. The NASDAQ is down over, let's get it right, 26% on the year to date for both of those. So lots of people are panicking. Now, we don't cover the day-to-day movements of the stock market on this channel. And the reason why is because I'm not a trader. Now, I don't knock hustles either.
You can't knock the hustle.
But I don't have time to be a trader. Trading is a business for some people, and some people do it quite well. And if they can make money, I say more power to them. But I think most people fit into the category of an investor. And if you look at the S&P over time, if you look at the Dow or the NASDAQ over time, then you see a upward trajectory. Now, if you look at it very carefully, you also see some sharp dips in there. Now, we've talked about this from time to time, the fact that there are instruments out there that will allow you to protect yourself from market volatility and have a predictable range of return, and also insulate you from the market bottom dropping out. And those can be found in certain insurance policies. So you might want to do your due diligence and figure out if that's an area that you want to look into and take advantage of at some point. There's a lot of benefits there. We talk about them from time to time. But let me get to a couple of things. Number one, good friend of mine who is an investor contacted me today. He's a young man. And he said, should I just take my money out of the market and just wait until, things get better? And I told him, well, this is how I think and what I would do. What I am doing, which does not obligate you or anyone else to do anything in particular, but what I am doing is I'm looking at the fact that the dollar has lost 1% of its value each month since about late 2020 because of obvious reasons that are, well documented and you've experienced, okay, in the last 2.5 years, 3 years. That is the case. So if I put my money under the mattress, it's going to lose value. If I put it in a bank account, it's going to lose value because that inflation number, even that low number that the news media always reports, that number, although it doesn't include food and energy, the two most frequent interactions with the economy that you have in life, even though it doesn't include that, the number they report, that is, the government does publish the number, but the news media doesn't report it because I think that if they did, their political friends wouldn't be so happy about it. So if you look at that number, the low one or the high one, a bank savings account interest rate is going to be laughable, okay? You're still going to be in a position where you are underwater. You're losing money. So the objective of the game, if you want to achieve financial independence, you've always got to have that money out there working, okay? Now, yes, you can put your money to work in the stock market, and a lot of people have had a lot of success with that, again, over time. Now, let me tell you why I, in particular, am not worried about what's going on today. Number one, and this is what I told an acquaintance. Notice I make the distinction between friend and acquaintance. But I told an acquaintance who happens to be in the financial services industry, and you'll see why he was in just a second. 2020 occurred, and the bottom dropped out of stock market. This guy ran around with his hair on fire. I mean, Chicken Little to the max. The sky is falling. We all gonna die. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And he acted that way toward his clients as well. Now, my advice was, let's just sit tight, not sell into a loss and lock in a loss. And let's understand that if this is the end of humanity, then we don't have to worry about our stock portfolio anyway, okay? And what happened? Well, things recovered to some degree and shot off like a rocket, okay? So he was wrong, spectacularly so, because he panicked. So I don't watch it day to day. I know that, over time, the trajectory has been in an upward direction. And here's the other thing. I don't derive all of my income or all of my financial benefit from the stock market or commodities or real estate. I own a business. In fact, my wife and I own 2 businesses. Now, the returns that you're going to get from owning a business are going to outmatch, they're going to surpass the returns that you would get if you were a passive investor in the stock market, or if you own 1 or 2 properties that maybe you dabble in rent and things like that. That's cool. All of that is good. Not saying you shouldn't do it. You should. You should stack assets. You should study your particular situation, and you should stack assets accordingly. Assets appreciate in value and or generate income. Now, your business is an asset, okay? And that's an asset. Now, let me give you a perfect example. The market was down just precipitously today. I'm taping this on the 9th, Monday the 9th. The NASDAQ was down over 520 points, okay? It was down a whole whopping 4% on the day today. And I am not looking for a 20th story ledge to jump off of, because you know what also happened today? I expanded my business. I served clientele. My wife did too. So that's how money and finance works. There are ups and downs. And over the course of time, if you average more ups than you do downs, then you're probably going to reach your financial objectives. It's a pretty good chance that that's exactly what's going to happen. So, again, we've expanded the business today, okay, into the Southwest with regard to the financial services company. We're going to be opening up a market there and serving clientele down there, okay, over there in Texas. I'm in Maryland, okay. So that's why I'm not worried about what's going on in the stock market today. The stock market will recover at some point. But as long as I continue to service clientele and active in this business, then my wife and I can continue to eat. Okay, we can remain in our home, and we won't have to look for a mule. We can drive around in cars, get to from A to B, and look toward doing other things in life, fulfilling dreams and helping others, like my nephews, for example, to get financially secure, okay? Pouring knowledge into them and doing stuff like that. So look, it's important that we stay on this track of financial independence. And one of the main reasons why that is because in many ways, we are seeing a situation where SHIT is hitting the fan. And I want to talk to you briefly, very briefly, about some of the ways that you can recognize when is hitting the fan. Let's call it EHTF to be friendly to the YouTube censors, excrement hitting the fan. When it comes to how we see and prepare for SHTF, thinking in terms of real and probable rather than fictional and possible can make a big difference. Even though SHTF has many forms and levels, and is in essence complex, random, diverse, and unsystematic, some patterns and principles are common to the way things unfold when it hits the fan. Now, why are we talking about this? Because your economic and financial behavior is what's going to insulate you from a real sea change in American abundance and our current way of life. Now, as we'll see, this probably ain't going to happen tomorrow, okay? But it is in the process of happening, okay? You might be able to hear my cat. She knows it's happening. She sees the cat food shortage, okay? Although I don't think she's bothered by it because we've been fixing her chicken, and she's been eating fresh chicken. So I think she's probably in favor, maybe even in some ways behind the pet food shortage. But that's a story for another day. So we're researching this. We're looking at this. I'm going to post in the description a link to the 15 common dynamics of SHTF collapses. I want you to study it. We're going to go over a few right now because you need to recognize the patterns, okay, so that you will know how to behave in terms of your financial fortress, your journey toward financial freedom. Okay, let's tackle the first one. SHTF is nuanced and happens in stages. Okay, thinking about SHTF as an on-off, all-or-nothing endgame is a common mistake that can lead to severe misjudgments and failures in critical areas of preparedness. Parts of the system crash, freeze, fail, or become impaired. Parts. This is how SHTF happens in the real world. It doesn't happen all at once. You know, all of the infrastructure doesn't go down at once. And when it does happen, people run for safety first. You're seeing that today. People want a sense of safety. So if my coworker's selling, then maybe I should sell too. I just want to be safe. Safety doesn't always make sense, though. When I was a firefighter, we were trained. I was a volunteer firefighter, for those of you who may not know. We were trained that sometimes people will go, if they're in a house that's burning, they'll have an imaginary sense of safety, and they'll go into the bathroom, and they'll get into the bathtub. And I guess maybe somewhere the reptilian brain is saying, the water, you know, vanquishes fire. Maybe I can last a little longer in here. But what a lot of people don't understand is that it's the smoke that gets you. Okay, you can't breathe in a fire. And so people have an imaginary sense of safety, and they do things that are actually contrary to their interest because they're seeking some safety. The same psychology occurs in the stock market and in financial markets. Another thing I want you to be aware of is history. Okay, when we look at history, take a history book that goes from 1776 to 1900. So in that book, you're going to have Revolutionary War. You're going to have the War of 1812. You're going to have the Civil War. Okay. And you're going to be reading that book, and it's a chapter about the Civil War. Then you skip over in the next chapter, maybe about the, chapter about the War of 1812, and then the next chapter is about the Civil War. So as you recount history through those pages, it's happening in relatively rapid fashion, okay? Now, if you lived through that period, remember 1776 to 1812, okay, that was a long time, all right? So things didn't just happen like that, but the groundwork was laid, and some of that groundwork was being laid overseas in England. Some of it was being laid here, and you didn't get to see it. When you read that history book, you're the air traffic controller. You see it all. So when we think about history, a lot of humans tend to believe, or not believe, but they kind of have an ingrained notion that history begins when you were born. Now, when I was born, let's see, 72, Carter was president. See how foggy it is? It gets more opaque. I didn't live through it, so I have to count on history, a retelling of history going back. But now I do remember the Reagan presidency quite clearly. Okay, I remember that. I remember Carter's presidency clearly. I just don't remember if he started up in 72. I think Nixon might have still been in there. But give you an example of this. My nephew, we were talking about history, and we got to 9/11, September 11th. And he had been very active in the conversation up until that point. And then he kind of glazed over. And I tried to bring him back in. I'm like, yeah, do you remember that day and this, that, and the other? And he's like, I wasn't born. Okay. So to that event to him is pure history. So let me bring it home. I say that to say that we can kind of get into that mode where we're the frog in boiling water. We don't quite see it all happening. Okay, this is what I attempt to bring to you. We have to understand that it is happening. SHTF and an implosion or a drastic evolution in the financial markets and the global economy is not going to be something that just happens next Wednesday. It's happening right now. All right, let's look at part of this that I believe is extremely important to internalize, okay? And let's see, give me a second here. No, I'm not going to edit this. I recently heard a YouTuber who is now deceased say life is not edited. So we're not going to edit the video. Not this part anyway. Okay. Everything crawls until everything runs. So it's basically saying you will know when you'll know just before the situation becomes untenable. But will you have time to react at that point? Now, number 2 is a corollary to number 1. SHTF happens in stair steps, but most people failing to prepare and getting caught off guard is evidence of the difficulty of the human brain to fully grasp the concept of exponential growth. It bears telling the analogy of the stadium being filled with water drops to illustrate this. Let's say we add 1 drop of water into a sealed, watertight baseball stadium. The deposited volume doubles every minute. So we got 1 drop first minute, and then the next minute we got 2 more drops, then 4 minutes, then 8 minutes, then 16. So, okay, we get the exponential thing going on. How long would it take to fill the entire stadium? Sitting at the top row in the cheap seats, we'd watch for 45 minutes as the water covered the field. Okay? All right. Then, at the 48-minute mark, that's 3 minutes later, folks, 50% of the stadium would be filled. Okay? 3 minutes, and it goes from practically empty to half full. At this point, we have just 60 more seconds to get out of the stadium before the water is spilling over the top of those seats, all the way at the top. This is an important dynamic to understand and keep in mind because it applies to most things. Another example, it took over 2 million years of human prehistory and history for the world's population to reach 1 billion. And less than 250 years more to grow to almost 8 billion. Okay? So this is basically saying, look, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time is right now. Start planting. Start doing what you need to do to become financially independent so that scarcity will not be knocking at your door. A shrink in resources invariably leads to changes in the individual's standard of living or entire society, depending on the circumstances, depth, and reach of the disaster or collapse. Then it starts affecting life itself, i.e. people dying. We saw that in Afghanistan and other places, but focus on Afghanistan. In the late 50s and 60s, Afghanistan was kind of a westernized place. Okay, then it became more secular. And as that happened, and tolerance levels from those who ruled dropped and became very much associated with religiosity, people started dying. Okay, essentially, when things really hit the fan, abundance vanishes and pretty much everything reverts to the mean. Food becomes about replenishment. Drink becomes about hydration. Okay, sleeping becomes about rest. Home becomes shelter, and so on. Surviving is accepting and adapting to that. So basically, let's take the drink, okay? I like root beer, all right? And root beer, if it's got caffeine in it, is not doing much to hydrate me. But let's take, I like this water called Waterloo. It's a sparkling water. They're not sponsoring me. They should be. I drink so much of that water. I would be happy if they just sent more water my way as a form of compensation for my kind words. But look, at the end of the day, if I can't afford that water, then I just got to drink water out of my tap, which is connected to my well, okay? Because at the end of the day, it's about hydration. So we're going to see in many quarters, we've already started to see a decline in the standard of living of the middle class here in America, okay? People are finding it tougher and tougher to afford. That's why Americans are realizing rising credit balances on their credit cards. All right. I'm going to put the rest of these in the description. I want you to go over them. I want you to internalize them and make sure you You look at them from your perspective and your level of preparedness, okay? Your level of economic preparedness. Okay, guys? I will talk to you soon. To learn more about how you can achieve financial independence, check out these videos we recently posted on the Money Changes Everything channel.